Imagine this: 10,000 Spartan warriors, draped in blood-red cloaks, moved across the Greek landscape like a scarlet storm, and every single step they took echoed with the memory of Thermopylae. The Persians thought they had crushed Spartan pride when they left Leonidas and his men buried under a pile of arrows and bodies. They thought wrong. What happened at Plataea wasn't just a battle, it was a reckoning, a promise fulfilled in fire and iron, and it would change the course of the ancient world forever. But before we get to that blood-soaked climax, we need to understand just how desperate things had become for Greece, and why this battle meant everything. The year was 479 BCE, and Greece was literally standing at the edge of total destruction. The Persian Empire, and I mean this without exaggeration, was the most powerful force the ancient world had ever witnessed. They had already burned Athens to the ground, slaughtered entire cities, and left Thermopylae absolutely drenched in Spartan blood. King Xerxes himself, after witnessing what he thought was the complete subjugation of Greece, had packed up and headed back to Persia, probably throwing himself a victory parade along the way. But he left behind something dangerous: a trusted general named Mardonius and a massive army with one job: finish what Xerxes started. Persia didn't expect that Sparta hadn't forgotten a single thing. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about humiliation, fury, and a promise. A promise made by dying warriors at Thermopylae that echoed in every Spartan household. We will return, and at Plataea, in the most brutal way imaginable. That promise was about to be kept. Let's rewind for a second and talk about what was happening in Sparta after Thermopylae. The smoke from that narrow pass still haunted every corner of Greece. Families whispered the names of the fallen: Leonidas, the 300 men who became legends overnight. But here's the thing: legends don't stop empires. The Persians kept marching deeper into Greek territory. They torched Athens, and they stood there like they owned the place because, honestly, they kind of did. But in the silent corners of Sparta, something was brewing. Not fear, not despair. Vengeance. Sparta mourned its king in the most Spartan way possible. Mothers who had lost sons sharpened the spears of their younger children. Fathers who had buried warriors trained their surviving sons even harder. A silent oath spread through the city like wildfire: Thermopylae will be avenged. Meanwhile, the Persian commander Mardonius was sitting pretty with his massive army, thinking Greece was about to fold like a cheap tent. He even sent messages offering peace, basically saying, "Hey, just surrender, pay us tribute, and we'll call it even." That message was met with the coldest silence you can imagine. No Spartan would kneel. No Athenian would trade pride for peace. And Mardonius? He was about to learn that the hard way. Sparta didn't just talk about revenge. They moved, not in rage or chaos, but with the kind of deadly calm that makes your blood run cold. 10,000 Spartans gathered, the elite of the elite, hardened by discipline and sharpened by grief. They weren't marching to defend this time. They were marching to settle a score. These warriors, draped in scarlet cloaks that fluttered like blood against the wind, moved north under the command of Pausanias, the Spartan regent who carried the weight of Leonidas' legacy on his shoulders. Sparta didn't believe in words. They believed in action, and the action they were about to take would echo through history forever. But here's where it gets even more insane. Something completely unexpected happened. Greece united. Over 70,000 Greek hoplites from Athens, Corinth, Megara, and more joined forces. These were men who literally argued over borders and resources just months earlier, and now they were standing shoulder to shoulder, not as separate city-states, but as one massive, terrifying shield wall. The Persians watched this coalition gather at Plataea, a wide plain that was absolutely perfect for open battle. And Mardonius smiled. This was exactly what he wanted. He thought this would be the final battle, the one that crushed Greek resistance once and for all. He had cavalry, superior numbers, archers who could darken the sky, and troops from across the empire. Victory, in his mind, was already written. But Mardonius made the exact same mistake they made at Thermopylae. He thought the Greeks were fighting for survival. They weren't. They were fighting for revenge. The night before the battle tells you everything you need to know about what was coming. In the Persian camp, there was music, torches, celebration, feasting. They were so confident that the Greeks would break that they were basically having a pre-victory party. Meanwhile, in the Greek camp, silence. No songs, no feasting, just the quiet, methodical sounds of armor being fastened, shields being inspected, spears being sharpened. There was no fear left in these men, only purpose. At Thermopylae, 300 died to buy Greece time. At Plataea, 10,000 marched to end it all. Dawn broke over Plataea, and the Persian cavalry swept across the field like a dark tide. Hooves thundered, arrows flew, dust rose in massive clouds. The Persians expected the Greeks to panic, to scatter, to break. They didn't. Every single Persian charge smashed into an unmovable wall of bronze and discipline. Spartan hoplites stood there, silent, stepping forward only when ordered, their shields overlapping like the scales of some iron beast. The Persians threw wave after wave, and each time they were forced back. Mardonius still wasn't worried. He had the numbers. He had cavalry. He had archers who could blot out the sun. His strategy was simple. Keep the pressure on until the Greek lines thinned and cracked. But then Sparta did something absolutely wild, something that confused the Persians so much they didn't know how to react. They refused to attack. The Persians were ready for a glorious clash, for that famous Spartan fury everyone talked about. Instead, the Spartans just stood there. Minutes turned into hours as the sun climbed higher. Persian cavalry kept circling, loosing arrows, taunting. Still no movement from the Spartans. Confusion rippled through the Persian ranks. Why weren't they attacking? Where was the rage? What were they waiting for? Here's what Sparta was doing, and it's honestly brilliant. They were letting discipline defeat arrogance. As the day grew hotter, the Persian cavalry got tired. Their horses needed rest. Their archers started running low on arrows. The Greeks, meanwhile, stood in formation, resting, hydrating, waiting. And then, in the moment when the Persians were at their most fatigued, Pausanias raised his spear. The signal, the Spartan line advanced, slowly, like some great red tide rolling across the field. No shouting, no chaos, just steady footsteps and iron will. The Persian cavalry rushed to stop them, but now they were tired and disorganized, and they crashed into that Spartan wall like glass. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. The Spartan right wing pivoted, and instead of just pushing forward into the Persian front lines, they targeted Mardonius himself. They went straight for the commander, just like Alexander the Great would do centuries later. They didn't want to just break the army. They wanted to cut off the head. Mardonius realized too late what was happening. He ordered his elite guard forward, but their light armor was no match for Spartan bronze. The clash was absolutely brutal. Spartan spears pierced shields, shattered formations, and the dust and blood filled the air until you couldn't tell where one side ended and the other began. And then it happened. A single throw changed everything. A Spartan warrior spotted Mardonius on his white horse, giving commands, and he hurled his spear with all the wrath of Thermopylae behind it. The spear struck true. Mardonius fell, and with him, the entire Persian command collapsed. The moment their commander hit the ground, the Persian lines broke like dry wood. Without leadership, that confident, massive army turned into a storm of panic. The battle became a hunt. Fear erupted through the Persian ranks like wildfire. This vast, confident army that had conquered half the known world was now cracking apart. Soldiers had no idea where to run or who to follow. The steady march of Spartan bronze drowned out even their war drums. And unlike other armies that would chase in wild, chaotic triumph, the Spartans moved with purpose. Every step forward was a reminder that this wasn't just a battle. It was justice being executed. They remembered Thermopylae. They remembered Leonidas. And the debt was due. The Persian lines crumbled inward, retreating toward their fortified camp. Thousands of soldiers fled, dropping weapons, pushing each other aside in sheer desperation. Arrows flew wildly, but panic had taken hold. And when an army loses its will, it loses everything. The Greeks pressed forward, Spartans, Athenians, and allies, surrounding the Persian encampment. That camp, once a symbol of imperial strength, had become a cage of fear. The Persians had trapped themselves in their own chaos. Some officers tried to rally the troops, swearing that their gods still favored them. Then the Spartan war horns sounded, not in celebration, in judgment. The Spartans smashed through the Persian barricades with a thunderous crash. The Persians tried to hold the gates, but Spartan shields came down like a storm against stone. Once inside, the Greeks didn't fight for glory. They fought like men fulfilling a sacred promise. Persian archers retreated to higher ground, loosing desperate volleys, but the Greek hoplites just raised their shields and kept advancing, spears thrusting upward with brutal precision. The Persians were fighting in total confusion. Their numbers meant absolutely nothing against Greek unity and Spartan training. One by one, the Persian banners fell. That camp, which had fed a mighty army, was now covered in smoke, screams, and the relentless thunder of Greek iron. For every single Spartan who fell at Thermopylae, Persia paid in thousands. When the Greeks finally broke through completely, they found Mardonius's personal tent still standing, filled with gold, luxury, all the spoils of conquest. It was such a stark contrast to the simple Spartan cloak that Leonidas died wearing. With nothing but his spear, the Persians believed victory came from wealth and overwhelming numbers. Now they lay crushed by men who marched with no riches, only memory, wrath, and discipline. As Greek banners rose above that camp, one truth echoed across the ancient world. At Plataea, Greece didn't just win a battle. They ended Persia's dream of conquering the West. The invasion that began in glory ended in ashes. When the smoke cleared, the battlefield told a story that would echo for centuries. The mightiest empire on earth had been brought to its knees, not by superior numbers or gold, but by something Persia never understood: Greek unity and Spartan resolve. The Greeks gathered their dead with honor. The Persians were left scattered, nameless, in the mud. This war wasn't just won. It was ended. Persia's dream of conquering Greece died at Plataea. King Xerxes, sitting comfortably back in his palace, received news of utter, complete defeat. His generals were slain. His elite warriors were gone. His empire had been humiliated by what he considered mere warriors from small cities. Greece, once divided by petty rivalries and pride, had become the shield of freedom, and leading that shield from Thermopylae all the way to Plataea was the Spartan legacy. Sparta didn't celebrate with festivals or grand monuments. They sent a simple message, carved in stone. Here the Greeks fought the Persians and broke their power. No boasts, no grand speeches, just fact. For the rest of the world, Plataea was more than a battle. It was a warning written in blood and iron. Even the greatest empire can fall when it underestimates those who fight for their home. Persia had power. Persia had riches. But Sparta had something Persia couldn't buy, an unbreakable will to say, "This far, no further." From that day forward, the Persian Empire never dared invade Greece again. The tides of history shifted, and the name Sparta became not just a city, but a legend of defiance. The Greeks didn't just win a war, they forged a legacy that's still alive today, living in every story of resistance, every stand against overwhelming odds. This wasn't just a battle of swords, it was a battle of spirit. And if you want to uncover more hidden battles, forgotten tactics, and untold truths from ancient warfare, make sure you subscribe, because the next story will take you even deeper into the wars that shaped our world.